Good evening, I'm Norman Robinson, and welcome to a new year of Affordable Housing Matters. On tonight's show, we will get some insight on upcoming affordable housing units coming to New Orleans. We will also meet with a residential mortgage lending specialist who can help upsize or downsize your home costs beginning this new year. Valuable information coming your way, so please stay tuned.
Nightly Business Report. A new team, new editorial resources around the globe.
Chaos here continues.
The same objective, insightful analysis of the top business news of the
For the
day.
Nightly Business Report, I'm John Ford.
Every weeknight, a half-hour wrap-up of complete market coverage.
With the business and economic stories that are crucial to you.
Television's longest-running business program.
Nightly Business Report.
Weeknights at 5:30 p.m. on WLAE.
Recently, the Greater New Orleans Housing Alliance and the Foundation for Louisiana launched the Housing NOLA plan. And here to tell us what that plan entails are Ms. Andronica Morris, representing GNOHA, and Mr. Pat Forbes of the Louisiana Office of Community Development. Good morning.
Good morning.
Or good evening, a good night, or whatever time of day it is. Welcome to Affordable Housing Matters. Now, what does the Road Home program have to do with affordable housing?
Well, the Road Home, as you probably know, has helped a lot of people, some 130,000 people, with funding to get back in their homes. That doesn't necessarily impact the affordable rental housing market that much, but it does help people who were homeowners before return to their homes. And so in that sense, it may reduce the requirements for affordable rental housing in other markets. So
now, which area of the metro has been most effective or most helped by the Road Home program?
We did some research this summer that indicates that the neighborhoods where the most Road Home money went were also the neighborhoods that were the hardest hit. So that's New Orleans East, Lower Ninth Ward, Gentilly, also St. Bernard Parish. Most of St. Bernard Parish were probably the most hard hit areas, and also where the vast majority of the money went.
How many people are still out there hoping, waiting, and relying on Road Home to get home?
We know that we have about 6,000 or 7,000 people who have not rebuilt their homes out of the 130,000.
And these are people who are looking to rebuild?
We do not know that yet. Some people...
That's the fly in the ointment.
It is not really the fly in the ointment, but it is just information we don't have yet, but we will have very soon. We work with Andronica's organization to outreach to people to try to bring them into the program, help them understand all the tools that we do have that may still help them and help them get into compliance and get home. We also have a recovery process where if people are not compliant with the program, we have to go get the money back from them. And we think that when we go start that process, when that process is ongoing, that people will come in. They'll come see Andronica and her folks, they'll come see the Road Home program and figure out how to use some of these tools we have, because our first priority is to get people home.
So how does your program factor into this?
So we were able to partner with the state through the Greater New Orleans Housing Alliance, or GNOHA's members, who are community-based rebuild organizations. So they've been helping people get home using Road Home money, using volunteer labor, using donations to get people back into their houses. And so what else? They become quite expert at helping to, squeeze the extra dollars and stretch them a little longer. So the state has hired GNOHA and these community-based organizations to do this outreach and to engage folks around these new rules and these new tools that the state's developed.
So how do you separate the people who want to come home, who can't, who don't have the resources or the knowledge, from the people who just took the money and didn't rebuild?
Well, that's easy, because the folks who want to come back when they hear about these programs, they show up at council meetings, they show up at Lakeshore Drive, they show up at the community offices saying there's something out there that can help me, and then the other folks kind of stay silent. But we're still pushing. Right, still working to, and honestly, people are really clear when you ask them. There are people who have maybe relocated and said, I'm done. I really want to move on from this. And so the community development organizations, the local partners, kind of work through that with them to kind of get them settled, because they do have to address what's happening with the property and figure out how to move on.
So how has the affordable housing crisis integrated into this, to the extent that it has pushed this forward?
So it's tied together because you have people sometimes living in two places, right? Like Pat mentioned. So they have their house that they would like to go back to, but then they're also renting or doubled up with family, and so that means that they are not settled. So they go into these counts, meaning they're either cost burden or they're technically homeless, so that means that there's somebody who need additional assistance. So if we can get them back into their home where they want to go, then if they're renting somewhere, that might be something that someone else can move into, someone else can afford. It's also helping the neighbors where their house is, because if that house is not rebuilt, what's going on in that surrounding block?
So this is all tied together.
Yes.
All right, let's move on now to housing NOLA. All right, it's a wide-ranging 10-year plan to develop 3,000 affordable homes for renters and buyers by 2018, and 5,000 affordable housing units by 2021. An ambitious plan, to say the least. So how do you affect this? How is that going to work?
So we have to work with all of the partners, and that's part of the reason why Pat's here to talk about this as well, because we had to have the state at the table. We have to have the Housing Authority, the City of New Orleans, city council members, as well as community at the table. And so it's always gratifying to kind of build these coalitions and realize that everyone wants to push in the same direction.
So how does the state help in that regard?
Well, we have, by virtue of a lot of the programs that we have lots of data on housing needs. We have some money left over. We have invested hundreds of millions, billions of dollars in housing, but we still have some money that we're trying to get invested, and obviously that impacts the affordable housing market, because our programs are largely driven at providing additional affordable housing. The Louisiana Housing Corporation, of course, has programs like low-income housing, tax credits and things like that, that can help drive the market and the availability of housing. But like Andronika said, it takes everybody, and that's what's been the most impressive thing about the Housing NOLA plan to me, is the outreach that they were able to do to reach people in communities, not just the state and government people and nonprofits, but actually getting out and talking to people in communities to get input for this plan.
No doubt this is one of the most important issues for a very large segment of our community. You're talking about the entire metro area. Right. 55% of renters spend more than a third of their income on housing. That's pretty significant.
That's right.
And because you know, housing values are up 54%.
Yep.
Rents are up 50%. So how do you make the numbers work for that segment, which we're talking about a large segment of people? How do you make those numbers work?
So we're talking about the $250 to the $250,000 solutions. So for some people, it could be things like energy efficiency going on in their apartments and in their homes, because cost burden is not just mortgage, it's not just insurance and taxes, it's also utilities. And so there's a lot of historic and beautiful and drafty houses in New Orleans.
Drafty for sure.
And so those are some of the low-hanging fruit, but we also need to collect the information to figure out how to make that work. So in incentivizing developers, developers who are using tax credits to build more green, so that if you get the rent down to a manageable amount, that the utilities aren't then making it unaffordable. So that's one of the ways that we address that for renters. And then also just creating more affordable housing.
How is this cost effective from the state point of view?
Well, when people need a place to live, our workforce needs a place to live, and HUD has established that paying over a third of your salary for housing is stressful to your family and to your community. So from a community development standpoint, it's incumbent on us to try to make sure that people are not rent stressed in that way. So we can provide subsidies, tax credits, any number of things that allow private developers to build, and because they have some of the construction costs offset with grants or low interest loans, they're able to go build and still make money while charging rents that are affordable to low to moderate income people.
So it appears that at least we're moving in the direction of getting a handle on the affordable housing crisis.
Yes, we're working
in the not too distant future.
And we've done a lot post-Katrina to address it. It's just that we need to do more. And so we wanted to take this time to really set out a specific plan. Like Pat mentioned, there's been a lot of money invested in the metro area, billions of dollars invested because of rebuilding. And so now those funds are coming to an end. So how do we continue that good work? And so this kind of plan gives everybody a roadmap, gives everyone goals. We're going to be grading ourselves every year to make sure that we're hitting these benchmarks.
All right, and we'll be watching you from this perch.
Okay.
All right, Ms. Morris, Mr. Forbes, thanks for being here and thanks for sharing with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, good luck. Coming up next, we will find out how to minimize your mortgage payments. Stay with us. Don't go far.
Watch WLAE Digital Broadcast Channel 32.3 for Catholic TV, offering programming relevant to Catholic viewers, including live religious services, Vatican events, talk shows, devotional programs, educational entertainment, and children's programs.
The Louisiana Mortgage Lenders Association is a full-time statewide organization devoted exclusively to the field of mortgage and real estate finance. With me now is Mr. Keith DeLatte, president of Intertrust Mortgage. Thank you for being here.
You're very welcome.
You know, if loan officers were as friendly as you, the mortgage lending process would be a whole lot easier, be a whole lot smoother. What should I know?
What should you know?
I'm coming in and I'm interested in a mortgage loan. What should I know about this process?
Well, if you kind of think about it, in the mortgage industry, we're basically looking at 4 items. They're called the 4 C's of lending.
Okay.
We're looking at capacity. Do you have the ability to repay a loan? Mm-hmm. Do you have the character or credit? How do you pay your bills in the past will reflect how you pay your bills in the future. Do you have any capital? Do you have any money to put down, or are you looking for 100% financing? And the collateral that is being pledged to the loan is the house. Is it worth what it's being sold for? So we evaluate those 4 items, basically following Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Ginnie Mae's rules. We're going to fit you in a box. If you fit in the box, you get a loan. If you're outside the box, the question is how far outside the box. You can literally be just on the outside of the box and someone can make an exception.
Okay.
But you don't know until you try. So I tell people all the time, your loan is looking good. You're not quite in the box, but I would rather have the investor tell me no than me tell you no. Let's roll the dice and see what happens. We're not spending any money, a little bit of time and energy and effort on the part of the borrower and myself to gather documentation to make that presentation to an investor.
So this is sort of like a consultation session that you're having at this
point? On
point.
A pre-qualification.
Okay.
Yes, it is, which I think every person potentially looking for a home needs to be pre-qualified. You can't go into a candy store and buy candy that you can't afford.
Okay.
So you don't want to go and look at $150,000, $200,000, $250,000 homes if all you qualify for is $100,000 to $125,000, because you're going to see the eye candy at $200,000 and you're going to be disappointed when you come down to $100,000. So in evaluating your income, your debt, your credit, your capital that you're putting into the property and the value of the home, debt to income ratio along with credit scores mandates whether you fit in that box or not.
So are you telling me as a potential client, what type of home I'm most qualified to apply for?
That is correct. I will evaluate. There's only 4 loan programs.
Okay.
You've got VA, and obviously that program you have to be a vet. You have conventional, which requires as little as 3% down, 20% or more eliminates mortgage insurance. FHA, which has been called the First-Time Home Buyers Program forever, and RD, which is rural development. We do a lot in the Lafayette area because we have a lot of rural areas. New Orleans, from what I'm understanding, RD is not as popular because inside the city limits is not rural. You have to be outside the city limits. So you're going to fit into one of those 4 programs will be best for you. If you don't meet the qualifications of conventional, as an example, with the debt-to-income ratio that is required, we'll move you to FHA, which has looser standards.
Okay.
Higher debt-to-income, greater forgiveness because it is called the First-Time Home Buyers Program. They want you to get into a house, they just want you to fit in that box.
Now, what about adjustable rate mortgages?
Adjustable rate mortgages is a valuable tool for the right person at the right time.
So how do I know if I'm the right person at the right time?
Well, the question is how long are you going to be living in that home?
Okay.
In the Lafayette area, we are very much oil and gas oriented. And there are a lot of people that will go to work for a company in Lafayette for 3 to 5 years, then they'll get transferred to Texas, they may get transferred to Oklahoma, all within the oil field with the company that they're working with. There's no reason for them to get a 30-year fixed mortgage at a higher rate if they're going to be out of Lafayette in 3 to 5 years. The adjustable rate mortgage will be locked for a 3, 5, 7-year period, and if they leave that house before that term expires, the 5 years as the example, they leave in 4.5, the rate has never adjusted. They sell their house and they had a lower rate.
So the dynamics of getting a loan or mortgage depends on what's happening in your life now and what's likely to be happening in your life in the future.
If you're a transient worker, then a lot of people will go for the ARMs, or they just don't want to live in an apartment, they want a home. And knowing that they're going to move quite often, military people sometimes do that, they move quite often. But you'll do a VA loan in Lafayette, then they could do a VA loan in Alexandria, they could do a VA loan in Texas, selling one house to then buy another. But the qualification of the amount of home that you can afford is going to be dictated by your income and your debt and what's called debt-to-income ratio. And if it exceeds a certain number, you're biting off more than you can chew.
Considering the Feds just increased the interest rate,
Yes.
is it time to refinance or not?
Most people, if they wanted to refinance, have already done so.
Okay.
Right now, the 30-year fix is typically 3.875 to 4%. 2 years ago, it was 3.25. So there were people that were refinancing right and left over the last 2 to 3 years because the rates were lower than they are now. What's going to happen now with the Fed increasing the short-term prime is eventually the 30-year fixed interest rate will start to mosey up a little bit. It'll go from 4 to 4.25 to 4.5, 4.75. And the people that have been sitting on the sideline saying, well, why buy a home now? The interest rates are so low, they're going to be low forever. It's been 7 or 8 years since they've moved the Fed mark. So now those people that have been sitting on the fence will probably move into the home ownership saying, let's buy in early 2016 because by the end of 16, the rates could be a point higher.
Wow. So that's something to consider seriously at this point.
Absolutely. And I think the real estate market will benefit from the Fed raising because those that are sitting on the sideline that want to buy and just haven't made the choice yet are now going to say, okay, Fed's on the move, it's going to go up, the time is here, let's go ahead and get that low interest rate now rather than later.
All right. Keith Dillette, President of Intertrust Mortgage, thanks for being here.
You're welcome. Thank you.
You know, our elected officials are often key to the growth of affordable housing in our city. When we come back, one council member will tell us what he's doing to stimulate that housing growth. Don't go far.
They've stormed beaches and freed countries. They've raised our flag and our hope. They've been called leathernecks. They've been called devil dogs. But above all, they're called Marines.
This past December, an affordable housing impact legislation was introduced in a regular council meeting to help impact the city's affordable housing stock. The man who introduced this significant piece of legislation is Councilmember Jared Brossette of District D. Welcome, Councilman Brossette.
Thank you, Nolan, for having me.
You're welcome. A significant piece of legislation. How did it come about?
Through some research. I'm a policy guy. Mm-hmm. I believe that to impact the quality of life of our citizens, we have to file legislation that's going to bring some outcomes and bring for a positive way of life for them. This piece of legislation, I reviewed legislation in San Diego. Mm-hmm. The City Council in Atlanta just passed best practices. Because affordable housing is not only a issue, the shortage in New Orleans, but in many cities around the country. Of course, we had Hurricane Katrina. A lot of our rental housing stock was damaged. Mm-hmm. There was state program, small rental. I think it helped, but not far enough. And as you see these new developments come about, I think we have to address the inequities in the shortage.
So I know you have to address the inequities in the shortage, right. But what's the incentive for developers to buy into this?
Well, developers, they come to City Planning Commission when they seek a zoning change or conditional use. This is a piece of information that the public and policymakers like myself would know. Mm-hmm. In the statement, addressing the affordability aspect, will the housing stock increase affordable housing, or will it decrease? You've heard of environmental impact statements. Yep. You've heard of fiscal notes. Mm-hmm. Similar to when there was the smoking ban, we received legislation. We received a fiscal note saying expenditures, revenues decrease, increase. Mm-hmm. This is a extra piece of information that the Office of Community Development will draft and present with whatever particular development zoning issues is related to the housing stock here in New Orleans.
So in that regard, when, say, a developer comes before the Planning Commission and he wants to do, develop a slew of condominiums, and does the Planning Commission look to see how much of that is going to be mixed income?
I think this Planning Commission, they look at the comprehensive zoning ordinance that we just passed and see if it's aligned with that. The staff creates a report, presents it to the commission, then it ultimately comes to the City Council. In this affordable housing impact statement, as I said, that important information about increasing or decreasing housing affordability will be part of that statement, so we as policymakers can review. Now, in the new CZO that we passed, that is now current law since August, we have something called inclusionary zoning, and there are incentives for developers to incorporate affordable housing in their developments. A lot of families are living paycheck to paycheck. A lot of people are spending 30% of their income on rent. That's cost burden, severely cost burden is where a lot of New Orleanians who are renting are, and that's 55% of your income. And so this legislation is just a step forward to kind of make a dent.
Yeah, but is this going to be enough? You say it's a step forward to kind of make a dent. Is this going to be enough in the future to prevent the kind of crisis that we're we're facing now?
No, it's just a start. It's not the end all, and we have to come up with some more creative legislation to make sure that that affordability is equitable across all parts of New Orleans, not just centered in the East or in Algiers, but that is spread out equitably. And in working with the Greater New Orleans Housing Alliance, you know, they're committed to seeing 5,000 affordable units.
Yeah, we talked to them earlier about 5,000 affordable units in the next by 2021.
Right, and that's a great goal, and we're going to continue to push to get that to reality.
All right, one last thing I want to get addressed before you leave, and we're running out of time. At least that's what my producer's telling me. I got to do what he says, or I'm toast. A lot of people in New Orleans East have been complaining about all of the low-income properties being driven to their area, which is in fact driving down their property value. What do you say to people who complain about that?
Well, I would say to them, as a legislator, I will continue to work with my colleague, Councilmember Gray, about that issue. Decades ago, a lot of that concentration was put out in New Orleans East, and I believe that was done incorrectly. It should have been spread out equitably across the entire city. Mixed income, but not just concentrated in one area. And so I feel for my friends and constituents out there, and we're going to continue to work to balance that out.
All right, Councilman Jared Broussette, thanks for sharing.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. We'll be back to wrap up the show right after this break.
You're watching WLAE, New Orleans Public Television. Find us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.
We would like to thank all of our guests for joining us on Affordable Housing Matters tonight. Remember, for more information on our guests on this show and others, please visit WLAE.com and click on the Affordable Housing Matters link. There you can get in contact with every guest we've had on our program. Also, tell us what you want to see on Affordable Housing Matters by emailing us at ahm@WLAE.com. Thank you again for joining us this evening. I'm Norman Robinson. Have a happy new year and a good evening.